All right, well, this is Aaron Squire coming to you guys again. Happy New Year. We've had quite a little bit of a hiatus on Deck Build the Squire, but we are back in full force. I've got Golden Saucer Guy on with me. We're going to talk about a bunch of tournaments coming up. We got one tomorrow. We're going to go over our 5 decks for tomorrow's tournament. So if you don't have any ideas, we're going to give you some of them ideas. And we're going to talk about some of the Hex updates. Golden Saucer Guy, just talk to me about some of the stuff that may have been going on with you lately, maybe in Hex, or Happy New Year. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I played a bunch over the holidays. That was a good time. I have like 14 copies of the Scrivener now for the alternate art that I will only use for 1 month a year.
Ah,
So that was fun.
right, right. Yeah, the Scrivener was nice because it was very difficult to get the AA for the Filk Ape, and that was just kind of, it's mildly playable, but it's just a nice card to have. It looks pretty good. Maybe next year
Yeah,
we'll get a holiday card that's a little bit more playable.
right, right.
But Scrivener was pretty nice. I enjoyed the
It was
Scrivener.
cool. Yeah, I actually have three of the alternate, or I had three of the alternate art Phil capes, and I saw it hit like $22 when I sold them all. I sold two of them for 20 and kept one.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't like I have the regular version. I'm perfectly fine selling this alternate art one for lots of monies.
All right, so let's go ahead and flip over to some of the Hex news. This just came out
Hmm.
tonight. Basically, they're just talking about some of the work that they've been doing with the PVE experience and uh, the new. Now I've lost my train of thought.
Right.
Basically, they're talking about the arena mode, and how
Right,
they're
right.
working on that, and that's going to change things. And then we're going to get chests. Hopefully, we get to actually open some of these chests that have been sitting in our inventory for at least
Oh
a
my
year and a
goodness.
half now.
I'm sitting on
So,
so many. I stopped even using my gold to get them. So I'm like, well, what the heck is the point of this if I'm never going to open
well,
these
you can
stupid
roll
things?
and get some of those alternate arts. I mean, you're basically
Yeah, I
rolling
got
to
a
get
couple.
stuff off of the wheels of fate.
Right, right.
They also announced the Gore Master and the Succulent Clunkadoon AAs, so look at those and all their glory. We know that Gore Master's very, very playable, and Succulent Clunkadoon is pretty playable. I mean, it's more of a reserves, maybe a main deck. I mean, it's nice versus that aggro matchup, but otherwise, I feel like there are
Right.
better bodies for the price there.
4/4 gain 4 life. I mean, that's not terrible as a whole. I mean, like maybe the chance of killing a one cost card is kind of neat. I mean, it almost borders on being main deck. It is a little bit,
Sure.
I guess.
I mean, you could do maybe two of. The Child's Play stream last summer, if you were on during that, you automatically should have the basically this nice hex cloud. Welcome to 2015 deck back or deck card back thing. Deck sleeve. Yeah, that's what it's
Yeah, there you
called.
go.
Yeah, I knew I could get it. It's been a tough week.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I know.
Yeah, it's a good sleeve. Actually, I like it. I like the hex logo on it. I like the blue sleeves. I like the storm cloud. It's just kind of neat. It reminds me of the dragon also one we have in there. I don't remember the name of it with the card that's on there, but I like it.
Was it the Jadim one?
Maybe.
No,
No,
or are you
the
talking
orange
about
back.
the orange back?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's Jadim.
Either way, it's good. It's good.
Moving on, we got a ton of tournaments to talk about, so we're going to go
Yeah.
from the furthest out tournament to the closest tournament. So starting with the one that's furthest out, the Hex Primal Budget Cup number 2, Friday, February 1st at 1800 Greenwich Mean Time. Basically, you get $10 to spend on a deck and then $2 for your reserves. And the way they do the values on the cards is you have to go to their store and that's what you have to use, which is pretty ingenious if you think about it. I mean, if
Mm.
I'm running a store and I want to drive traffic to it, this is a great idea, I think, for them. So it's a win-win. The tournament, I believe, is free, right? It's completely
Hmm.
free
Well,
because it's
it better
for.
be if you're spending ten
Yeah, I mean,
dollars
if
in the
you're
store.
well, you're not going to spend $10. You're
Yeah.
you're basically you can have the cards in your inventory, but
Mm.
they can only be worth ten
Right, right.
dollars, the total deck price.
All right.
They've already banned a card which is Gore Feast because it's depreciated in value so much. It's a tier 1 deck. Everyone would play it.
Mhm.
Is what they said. Although I mean maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Gore Feast definitely gets less good when you can't play you can't really play more than Gore Feast. Plus, you could play like two. What is it called? the 1/2 that allows you to draw more cards as you play more troops. The oh my gosh, tonight is just not my night.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
I know. I usually have this stuff memorized,
Yeah,
but
I can't
basically
either either.
that
So
guy, basically the guy that he's a 1/2 for Sapphire, and you can you when you play troops, it gives them inspire whenever they die. You can draw cards. I'm gonna remember it later too. So this is a good tournament for people that don't have a lot of money, that are maybe just spending gold on the auction house to get their cards. There's all the time there are new players coming in, and I see them come on the Reddit forums, and they're always asking, "What can I do? I want to play competitive, but I don't have a lot of money, and I want to do free to play and this and that." This is probably like your best shot, playing some sort of event like this if you don't have a lot of money to spend.
yeah, I might not be running the deck I'm going to if it wasn't for the fact that I had lucked out and picked up a couple cards by opening packs of all things. So hey, budget's tough.
Right. And that's another thing that's interesting about this season compared to the last season, because it was just easy to get a lot of the set one cards, whereas now all the Kickstarter free packs and things, or things that people had previously already paid for, has kind of run out. So people are kind of running on their own budgets. So it's going to be very much more interesting this season. I think it's going to be tougher to get those tier 1 decks with some of the tier 1 cards that are in that $20-$25 range.
Right, right.
Moving on, the Hextech Open Oberon, January 17th, 2015. That's going to be next Saturday.
Right.
It's $5 entry fee. You can go ahead and sign up now. Send your entry fee over to Hextech. I believe it's the account. It's got send your deck list of official Hextech, and then where is it? There's a place where you have to 500 plants. Okay, so use official Hextech in game. That's who you're going to send your 500 plat to, and that goes towards the actual entry fee towards the prizes. Now, this is actually kind of like the first cash tournament, as it's sort of, because like you're going to win platinum, which is the money in game. Obviously, we can't take that platinum and get money back from it, but it's the closest thing to a cash tournament that we've had so far. So I definitely applaud this effort. I mean, basically, it's $100 if you get first place.
This will separate out a bunch of people too that are, there's obviously players that jump into these tournaments with whatever deck they have and play through it. So I can see, this bringing out some more of the more serious players.
Oh,
People
for
are
sure.
actually willing to drop some money into this.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like the big thing that you would always see on the other tournaments is round one would be very cumbersome because people wouldn't show up because it was free. So like if they didn't show up, it wasn't a big deal. Whereas if you're paying for this, I would hope that that's a little bit more of incentive to actually show. And they have their banned list right now is Grave Nibbler right now because it can't be buffed or debuffed. Elderon the Imprisoned apparently transforms from non-troop damage, and then Rune Ear Burrower randomly gets +1/+1 from random troops as their banned list.
Right, right.
So
yeah, I think that the Hextechs actually do a decent job with their ban lists. I know the one we have coming up here tomorrow has also a good job. The other event, the Hex Primal one, I think their ban list will grow here a little bit. But as we find these bugs, some of them aren't game enders, but just give you enough of an advantage that someone can exploit them.
Right. I mean, they're going to fix this stuff too during that time period. So somewhere in between here and there, hopefully the ban. They said their ban list is incoming later, but I'm sure that we'll definitely get that later. Moving on to the 5 Shards Diamond Cup tournament, we've got Technofy in the channel with us. He did this wonderful video which explains exactly what you need to do. If you go to the 5shards.com website, you can go there. It's not on this one, but there's another thread where you can go and sign up. It's got the links and stuff. Takes you right in there. Very easy to type in your deck list. It does a Google Docs thing. I found it to be very, very simple. This tournament is that it's only set 2 cards, which is good and bad at the same time.
I'm a little mixed on it. I mean, okay, to be fair, I am in both really happy about this and both also kind of like, oh, this is painful. I mean, I don't have to see angels and board sweeps and
Gore Feast
and vampires, things that have been like Yeah, the things that have been like the
The
bane of my
staples.
existence for the last like, 4 or
Staples.
5 months. Cards I don't necessarily either A have four ofs or B don't feel like buying four ofs or just, I'm tired of. So I don't have to see those. That's really great. The downside is I think this set doesn't have is more of like an addition. It's not a core set, you know what I mean? This is to help flavor a block, not
Right.
be a standalone. So it has a lot of it doesn't have it's not very well rounded. It doesn't have a lot of some of the key pieces that you expect to see out of like a decent set. So it's definitely got some shortcomings, but at the very least, it's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, for
Yes.
sure. I mean, yeah, it's definitely going to be great. Very, very interesting. Very short metagame to try to try to get into, and then all of a sudden that metagame is completely gone. So the value of this is probably more in the finding those interactions between the set two cards. However, when we go back to the set one meta, like it's going to have some impact, but I don't think it's going to have maybe as much impact as it could if we were to do multiple tournaments with set two only. That would definitely be even more interesting. This is the first time we've seen us do the five shards cup tournaments. So this is the Diamond Cup. I think in the future they're probably going to do cups like this where you're going to have to use just the latest set, or basically like a block format would be comparable to this. But yeah, it's very difficult to say exactly how this is going to affect the metagame once we
Right.
go back to set one.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I know it'd be a little complicated, but I might like to see a set two and no rares and legendaries from set one. I know it's a little bit odd to like pick and choose, but I think that might give it enough flavor where you and not and still keep yourself away from the first set meta.
So some of the there's some banned cards and then conditional bans, and you really have to play around certain things. Um, so outright bannings, Grave Nibbler, Runier, Burrower for the same reasons as the other one. The Eldurons isn't banned because it's in set one, so they don't need to ban it because it's already banned. All set one cards are banned except for the basic shards and
Mhm.
the champions from set one. Flag Scrapper, they talk to you about how you can exploit it, or Shaggoth, so please don't do that. Conditional bans on robots and Giles, just don't do. You can't put those two things together. Fisher Smith, when you play them with inspiring troops, it can really like it has an unintended effect, and that's also banned. We've got a couple of other things where there are warnings. If you play with these certain cards, this can happen. Like, for instance, Spam Bot loses its self buffs when it leaves play or is transformed. So, lots of problems actually right now with set 2 still after it's been about a month. I've had an error where I tried to draw I was in the middle of like looking at my hand. I played my shard, and then all of a sudden I drew 7 cards, but they weren't actually in my hand. And I
Right, right.
think that may have something to do with me hitting F8. But I could be completely wrong about that
No,
too.
I've had that a couple times where I've been playing and all of a sudden I drew like 8 cards off my opponent's deck randomly. Like,
Right.
and then all of a sudden
But
after
it's a
that you
visual
can't
bug.
right, and you can't get rid of them, but it tells you your hand is full, so you're stuck on your turn. You have to basically like succeed
Yeah.
the game.
So hopefully we
Um,
won't see too many of those bugs tomorrow.
yeah, I think that one has been worked out for the most part because I haven't had it happen to me in a few days, so we'll
Hey, all
see.
kinds of technical difficulties, right? It's just
That's
one
all
of
right. It
those
wouldn't be.
nights. It's the first night back, okay?
Yeah, you haven't done this in a year.
I haven't done this in a year, all right? Jeez. All right, let's go to the decks and get those decks set up. So these are going to be Diamond Cup. They all say Diamond Cup in the title, so I can just open them in some tabs here.
Has my cough switch been working? Have you heard me cough at all?
I just heard you just now.
Okay.
All right,
Can you
so
hear me right now?
looks like okay. So now hit the right F key there, F11, not F12.
There you go.
There we go. All right, so we're gonna start with at the bottom here. I'm gonna look up. Oh, it's Lady Shimmer. That's who it was. Lady Shimmer
Okay.
was the one. Yeah, that was kind of bugged for me. So we're gonna go through some of the decks here. We've got 5 decks to go through. Kind of like my thought process on them. We're gonna go from the what I think is the worst deck to what we found is some of the better decks. One of the decks actually he played Gold Saucer guy played against yesterday, and he just told me about on my Twitter feed. So we built this right before the show.
Mhm.
And I think it's also a very strong deck using centering around the Killipay. But we're not talking about that first. We're going to go with this. This first one is a mill deck, which is kind of similar to one that I played in the fourth round of the last Cup tournament, or was it the third round? Maybe it was round three.
Somewhere
But
around there.
basically, it uses Daughter of the Stars. Daughter of the Stars is actually a one-sided sweep, and I didn't realize this. For 4 Sapphire and 10 charges, which seems like a lot, except we're in set 2 and we can make charges much more easily. Put each opposing troop into its controller's hand. Each opposing troop, not your own. So it's a soft sweep. So you basically dump all your opponent's stuff, and you could like push some damage or just save your board state. Running 2 Zakir in here as another like possible sweep or a card that could take over the game, so it's an alternate win condition. We've got the 4 Storm Clouds. These help you. You're playing a lot of charge generation in here, so Storm Cloud helps out a lot. The player I was playing against, and I forgot his name, so I'm sorry if you do watch the show. I would like to give you credit for this deck because it is a very interesting deck. But you get your charges, you sacrifice your Storm Cloud, you've got these nice blockers that you can now sacrifice to draw cards or have other effects on the game, which is nice. They're also decent attackers, like in an open board state, which sometimes happens, and they're because they have that nice evasion with flying. Put 3 pulse reactors in here. Now the nice thing about this is it doesn't actually exhaust to use the counters. It just costs you 1. So if you have like 6 counters, you can use it on 3 different troops in the same turn. You just use this to keep certain big troops exhausted on your opponent's turn so they can attack you. You want to make sure that you're exhausting your opponent's stuff right before they go to combat, because if they go to combat and then you exhaust it after they've already attacked, they're still attacking you. So do keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a deck where you can't pass and play. Like you got to make sure whatever you're playing this turn, you have to kind of think ahead for your next turn, even because you want to be in a position where you're having the least amount of damage coming through to you, because you're trying to live for a long game here to mill them out. Because you're not going to mill their whole deck out very quickly. So it's going to be a long game of control and kill and keep up, and sometimes that can be a little bit tough if you're not planning ahead.
For sure, definitely. Murmurs of the Void is your answer to all troops. Basically, the way that you need 6 resources in order to do it, or you need to have Dementia Daisies out, and you can play it and then play like a resource or play something else that generates a charge or something. Although if you had 5, you played this and then you played a resource, it would be the same thing, but whatever. You know what I'm saying. But basically, you can sacrifice it and bury the top 5 cards, and you've already put one of those cards from your opponent's field on top of their deck. So you're really only milling 4 when that happens, because you're taking your opponent's stuff. But still, removal is removal, and this is in this format, it's at a premium.
Right. I mean, people are paying 5 right now for Dishonored or whatever. I mean, so you're really gaining the same. Add a little bit of mill to it for 1 extra. Yeah. So
we've got Mentor of the Song here. This is going to help you draw those extra cards, chump block if you need to, and in some sort of strange board state, maybe even attack for you. The 2 front end is pretty relevant. It does cost 3, which is kind of a bummer, but it's 2 cards. It gives you the Oracle Song, and it's a nice attacker or blocker. Most of the time, it should be blocking for you. Mentor of the Flames is another one which we haven't really found a really great home for in any specific deck that's constructed yet. Maybe soon. The big thing about playing a lot of these cards is they can be played around, so it's like, or they force your opponent to play around them. So if you swing in with Mentor of the Flames and I've got Filcape up, I know if I block your Mentor, I've got 3 damage on my Filcape, and then you just burn for the last 2. So I typically am not going to block them. So that allows you maybe to get damage through where you normally wouldn't, but at the same time you're kind of giving up 1 for 1 in that situation. Anything to talk about with this specifically, you think? Or
well, I mean, if you're swinging a Master of Flame, you might steal a surprise victory from damage. If you swing in 3 times in Master of Flame, they're like, well, I'm at 11, I'm fine. Well, that's a burn and a Zakir now has put them into being able to be killed. Plus, if you pick their whole board up late game and swing for 5 or 6 damage, you might finish them off. So they may be building up for a big mill victor for you, maybe milling them, and then all of a sudden, surprise, you have a Charge Hulk, a Mentor, and a Mentor Song out, and you just pick their board up and swung in for 10. So surprises are here in this deck.
Yeah, for sure. Dementia's Daisies is another one that's really nice as a blocker, but at the same time, you really got to be careful with this. Like if you think your opponent's going to trick, you're pretty much you can't block with it. You need it to mill your opponent most of the time, and then like when your life total gets below that, 12, 10, 8, somewhere in there, that's when you probably want to start blocking with it. Now, if you are almost guaranteed that your opponent can't do any tricks, like they're exhausted on their resources, then you're obviously going to block. But just be careful, if you do decide to play this deck, that's one of the things you got to really watch out for. Most of the cards we've looked at so far are somewhat inexpensive, except for Zakir. The Crackling Vortex is one of the other rare cards in here. You don't necessarily need Zakir. You probably could go with something else that just board finishes decently well in Ruby. However, I don't know how many things are in like that uncommon range that would be easy to get a hold of if you don't have him. He's just really, really good. But we do have the Crackling Vortex. This is going to be one of those chase card staples that's can only appreciate. Right now we're showing it at hovering around $5 and $6. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a must staple in decks where you want to produce a lot of charges, and that's definitely this deck.
Yeah, right now we've got a lot of options for getting different types of shards, so this double charge thing is pretty big, I think.
Yeah. We've already gone over a lot of the things that produce or that take advantage of us gaining shards, besides obviously our champion one-sided soft sweeping our opponent. We're producing charges with like Crackling Wit, the Crackling Vortex, the Crackling Bolt, Charge Hulk, and of course our normal resources. We also have 4 Immortal Tears in here to fix us, and I just want to say that if you're running 2 resources tomorrow and you're not running at least 2 Immortal Tears, I don't know, you really should question that, because Immortal Tears not only fixes you, but it's going to make your deck much, much more consistent. So I don't know, I'm an advocate of 4. I mean, you may be in a certain aggressive deck where you need more spells or troops or something, you would play less, but right now, because there's like you can only fix with 4, so we're back to set 1 fixing. I would run 4 of them.
Yeah, I mean, why it's such? I think unless you are again running an aggressive deck, I don't know why you wouldn't. It thins your deck out. It gives you that fixing. It's an easy first turn play. Like you're gonna have a turn, but sometime between like 3 and 6 where you have 1 extra shard floating, or you need another shard, and you have the ability to just pop it and get 1 back into hand. In this deck, it's great because you're looking to get those charges built up. So I don't see a reason not to be running Immortal Tears whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest things to me is just sometimes when you draw a hand and you see 2 shards and then all of a sudden you see an Immortal Tears. I mean, that's basically a 3-shard hand with some deck thinning. I mean, you're kind of down a spell in some ways, but in other ways, like the deck thinning makes it very valuable. So moving on to, let's see, what was the next one I thought was... So that's like probably not the best deck. We'll go on to the next one that I think is... pretty good. We'll see if it'll come up.
Mono Ruby?
Yeah, the Mono Ruby one. So this one is probably a hair better. Not really that much better, because it's very much all in on one strategy, and that's not this deck. That is this one.
If Gore Feast was a part of this deck, I would probably think differently. But.
Right. So again, I put a Zakir in here, but you wouldn't necessarily have to play that. That's again for kind of like that late game when you built up stuff and you've got things. You also have some fixing to help you. We're playing Mono Ruby. We're playing 19 Ruby Shards, and then we're again playing those Crackling Vortexes because we're kind of going in at and doing like a combo thing. So we have 2 cards that take advantage of the generation of extra charges. One of them being the Gore Master, and then the other one being
Arena Regular.
The Arena Regular takes advantage of it, but not a lot of advantage. Where is he? It's the Pulse robot thing. Is it not here? It should be here.
You didn't list it, no.
Oh, apparently it's not here. Okay, well it should be in here. In the one I played online, the Pulse robot's in here.
The Reactor Bot.
Reactor Bot, yeah. Yeah, he needs to be in here.
That's a wonderful card.
So actually, let's go ahead and fix that right now. So we'll go over to all cards, and we'll get that Reactor Bot in here because he needs to be in here.
I love having Reactor Bot out, drop a Charge Hulk, and then play a shard or burn something, and you're looking at 7/7 swinging in that didn't cost you anything. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Can't beat it. I mean, yes, it's aggressive only. Like, it's not obviously defensive. Now, if you are running Crackling Bolt or something where you have the ability to generate a charge off when it's not. Well, I guess this one's a basic. So if you have a way of like drawing cards with some of the other crackling cards, in which way you gain a charge, it's kind of neat because you can block with that and then activate it, something that gives you a charge. So that's kind of neat. But this doesn't necessarily have that option.
Yeah, I
So get the
definitely like
four in there.
the reactor bolt bot in here. The big problem is that it's very easy to chump, and you're not always guaranteed to get those charges every turn.
Right.
So you kind of need to be able to deal with that. So again, we're going to use pulse reactor to exhaust our opponent's stuff and get the damage in when we really need to get it in. It's just the
Right. I also
go
I
ahead.
like Boulder Toss and Stink Troll with that a lot too, because if you manage to get a Charge Hulk and let's say a Crackling Vortex in some range, and you Boulder Toss that, so you're looking at 7 damage you can apply to something quickly. And that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the extra Zakir, probably run 2 Stink Troll because you get that crush damage through, and that's going to help out a lot. It's a one shot though, so you kind of have to be somewhat careful with it. So I've also got Strap Tech Brawler in here. You know what? I think I actually removed that guy. Maybe.
I might have. I don't necessarily see as that being a huge value here, because I mean, what are you trying to go for? The Heroic Outlaws Akira turn early,
Yeah,
or
I think that's what was originally in here, but you want to be more aggressive than that. So actually,
yeah? So there's
you'll probably actually pull this. Let's go ahead and fix this right now. So we'll go ahead and pull the Brawler.
Mhm.
We're gonna pull Zakir. So we
Yeah,
are
because
deck
you're
building.
running. Yeah, see,
I told you we wouldn't deck build, and here we are
we did it
fixing this
anyway.
deck that I built
Right. Yeah,
myself.
because
Yeah, I fixed my
Scrap
own decks.
Brawler. Yeah, because Scrap Brawler is seeking out to get that turn 5 drop for 2 cards, and that's not very much of value. Now, you could say you're trying to do that to get a Charge Hulk and a Crackling Bolt and other things off in one turn, maybe, but that's a little bit of a stretch, too. It's not a bad. I mean, Scrap Brawler's not a bad card, but it doesn't necessarily fit entirely.
Yeah, I agree. It's just one of those like, it might do some erroneous damage. We had inductor cops. We pulled them. We'll put 2 back in. We could probably, yeah. I mean, the nice thing with Inducto Copter Bot is as long as it gets to attack, it's going to create a charge for you. So no matter what, like if you really, really, really need that charge, you can attack let it get killed by something in the air.
Right? I
Um,
mean, if you play a Shard, then attack with Inductor Copter. I mean, you're looking at your Gore Master, what, getting be having a 4/3, so
right.
could be
And
worse.
then I'm running Lionel Flynn, so you get that buff on Gore Master, and then we double it, it becomes 8. The first time, and then you double it again, it becomes 16. So I mean, that's only like after dropping like a Crackling Vortex or maybe a Charge Hulk or something like that.
Hmm.
So the deck is okay. It's very swingy. It's got a lot of like weaknesses. Like obviously, Gore Master is going to get killed by Crackling Bolt, and everybody's going to be. If you're in Ruby, you will be playing for Crackling Bolt. It's probably going to be the most played card tomorrow. Um,
Yeah.
Crackling Bolt is probably going to be the most played card tomorrow. I can almost guarantee it. It's common; everybody has access to it. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of Crackling Bolt. I'm running it in the deck that I'll be running
Yeah, I
myself.
think this deck is going to probably steal a couple wins here and there, but you're going to
Yeah.
probably get out tempoed by like humans and stuff like that. So,
Speaking of humans, this was another one that was kind of hard for me not to play. Um, but I think this one is also an excellent choice because of the cost associated with it. We've got basically Sir Giles, and this looks like it's in Sapphire, but it's only in Sapphire to get the extra effects when we have Sapphire in play. We're not actually playing any Sapphire troops. We're just getting the extra Sapphire effects.
right.
So we have the one of War Prodigy, and I tried playing 4 of these, but because we're not really in Sapphire and we're not playing a lot of that stuff, it's kind of hard to get to the double Sapphire. But it's nice because when he comes into play and you do have everything, he becomes a 4/5 for 3, and he buffs all your guys immediately. So
Yeah, he's
you don't have
good,
to
but he's
worry
just
about it.
not that. I mean, you basically banking on your Royal Herald coming up earlier to make him
Well, I
really
mean, you
good.
got a lot of fixing in this deck, anyways. I mean, yeah, you get your Herald, and you play all the shards basically. Um,
Yeah, I think
Vanguard.
my issues with this deck are, what if you don't get the right blend, or what if you pull, you know, uh, the Mortal Tears, a Crackling Bolt, and then like the only other troop in your hand is like a Vanguard of Gwaine.
That's true. I mean, yeah, you are playing the 4 Immortal Tears in here again to fix you. Um, So hopefully that will help deck thin you, and hopefully you draw enough troops. I mean, you're playing a ton of troops in here. Again, we're playing the typical 4 Crackling Bolt, 2 Boulder Toss in here. I don't like to
Yeah,
play
you're
too
gonna
many Boulder Toss because you have to have a troop to actually use it. So if for
right.
some reason you don't have any troops, it's useless to you.
This deck's got is definitely got some neat features. It is tough for me not to play this deck as well because look how simple it is. I mean, you turn one Queensguard, turn two Highlands Shinobi. You're you're swinging in, tapping down creatures. I mean, by the time their opponent hits turn 4 or 5, they're sitting at like 10 health.
Right.
So it's got some big positives. But man, if you don't fire on all cylinders, you're in trouble. Plus, you're going to empty your hand out. You're going to be top decking by like turn 6,
Right.
turn
Which
5.
which
I
isn't so
mean,
bad tomorrow because we know that there are no sweeps. Like there's no 2 point sweep and there's no extinction tomorrow, so we don't have to worry as much about those sweeps. So this is, if you're gonna play this deck, if you don't have a lot of money, like this is probably I think the most competitive deck you can put together. And I'll tell you, probably the main card you really need if you're gonna buy rares for it is probably gonna be Forgotten Monarch. So the way you gem this guy is you gem him with the Ruby Shard, where it makes him where he can't be blocked, which is Ruby of Flames, I believe. Yeah. So you gem him with double Ruby of Flames, and then you gem him with Prime of Solidarity, where he gets +1 to all of your troops when it is that he deals damage to your opponent. And for the most part, hopefully he should be pushing through that damage. I mean, there's going to be a decent amount of Ruby troops tomorrow because there's going to be a lot of Crackling Bolts played, so they'll be out there. But hopefully he'll be able to get through some of that damage. And you have, some removal for those Ruby troops too, so that should help out quite a bit. It says he costs 5, but he most of the time will cost you, I would say, he's definitely going to cost you at least 4, because if all you had was Diamond Shards, it's 1 less for every shard type that you have. So most of the time he costs you 3 or 2 with this deck because you have a lot of fixing in here.
mhm. I think this deck is also a good combination against the next deck we're going to talk about. I think this does well. This is probably one of the better options for playing the one we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, for sure. Just real quick, we've got the Royal Herald in here. The Royal Cutblood is like conditional. You might take this down to 2, I think, because it's offensive, not defensive, and there are very much times when you need to be defensive. The Shinobi is another great card for this deck to exhaust those troops that are problematic for you, so you can push through damage with
Yep.
your Monarch or your Queen's Guard. Queen's Guard is a card that is basically like the gas troll of this set. Gas Troll, if you remember when it was broken, used to actually get bigger, +1/+1 whenever you played a Ruby Shards, which was not intended. Whereas this guy is definitely intended to get bigger when you play Shards, as long as you have 1 Diamond, 1 Ruby, and 1 Sapphire in play. So you can actually do that by turn 2. You can drop him with a Diamond, and then on turn 2 you could drop a different Shard and play a Royal Herald, which will give you that 3rd Shard, and he'll be a 2/2 swinging on turn 2. Pretty good, and then he just snowballs from there. Every shard you play from there, he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, you think it's a vanilla troop, but this has got to be one of the best uncommons you can play if you're playing humans. Like,
Right.
that's it. If you're playing humans and you're not playing this, you're probably playing Inspire, which means you're playing a very much slower deck, and I think it's a much weaker deck, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, if you roll into this with, let's say, Queen's Guard, then Shinobi, and then turn 3 Herald, you're looking at using your third charge
Which would be more
with,
typical.
yeah. I mean, those are 1/2 1/2/2s, or even then a Queen's
Right.
Guard, Highland Shinobi into Gwaine or whatever. I mean, you're looking at swinging in pretty early with some significant amounts of damage. You're doing like 2 and then 4 and then 6. You're looking at your opponent being down to 8 by the time he stabilizes at turn 4 or 5. So this deck has potential and it's very aggressive. Now, if you're playing another aggressive deck, clearly you're trading some troops. So,
Right.
but yeah, this deck has had some potential. Like what we were looking at, it was one of those moments where like, maybe I should run this.
Yeah, especially this Swift Strike. We've got 8 Swift Strike troops, the 4 Shinobi and then the 4 Gwaine, and Sir Giles is going to give them more front ends, which is what they need to, be able to kill those opposing troops, and cause good trades for us. Unfortunately, we don't have, quick action speed. A Crackling Bolt isn't quick action; it's basic action, which means we have to play it in our second main phase. We can't play it as a trick during combat to get more value out of it. The best we've got is Boulder Toss right now. One last thing, Heroic Outlaw is in here because you're going to gas out eventually. You're going to run out of troops. And so what I did to gem this guy is I gave him flying to give him evasion because we already used all of our ruby, our mono ruby evasion on our Monarch. And then I gave him the gem, and this is like a two-edged sword type of gem, but basically where everybody discards their hand and then draws 3 cards. And probably more often than not, that's going to work against you, but hopefully it would draw you enough gas to get you back into the game too. So I mean, especially if you're really close, you could draw that, you know, that one crackling bolt or that boulder toss that you need to finish the game and close it out.
Right.
So,
If you're playing a normal deck, I mean, your average, if their costs are a little bit higher than yours, you're looking at them playing 1 card on their turn from this, and you're looking at maybe being able to empty all the cards you draw that turn or the next turn. So
other options with this are definitely like you could go with like ferocity for speed, or maybe you like get some life drain and you feel like flying plus life drain as a 4/4 would be pretty sick, as that's, you know, that matches up pretty good against like Angel of Dawn, like if there was an Angel of Dawn right now. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely good. We just got to figure out the best ways to use him. There's so many different things we can do with those gem sockets. Additionally, like I've actually had him save a game for me where when I was below 5 health, I was able to cast him and trade with something my opponent played, and in the following combat. So I mean, don't discount that either. You know, that the being below 5 health and being able to play him for free is definitely a very good thing with the Heroic Outlaw. I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on with this deck before we move on.
Nope. I'm ready for this next one.
All right, so the next one is one that Golden Saucer guy ran into, and when we were testing our deck, and this is the Killipede deck. Basically, again, we're running Ruby, so we can play with those wonderful crackling bolts, but we get to touch on another crackling card, the Crackling Rot, which it gives a troop permanent -2/-2, and you gain a charge, and it's quick action. It's one of the few quick action removal tricks that we've got, and it's great in this deck because I was playing it earlier and I could do things like swinging with Killblade and then take somebody's attack down to 0 with Crackling Rot, and it's a 1-for-1. I'm trading Crackling Rot for their troop, but I tricked on with Killblade to get them, whereas I wouldn't necessarily normally be able to just Crackling Rot to kill their troop outright. So I think that's a great combination in here.
Right. I dropped a Zakir, they Crackling bolted and then Crackling Rotted. So they, even though they trade 2 cards for Zakir, the Zakir is a game ender for them. So
exactly.
Yeah, they took him out. So it was fantastic. And then of course Killipede, they kept clearing my board and Killipede snuck in twice and that was it. So
yep,
this deck has some potential. There's no doubt.
Killipede is a card that went up in value a lot. I actually counter drafted it during the whole thing when we were trying to win our Filk Apes, and after I looked at the price on it, I was like, seriously, like $12 for this? People are pretty excited about the Killipede, and if it's going to do well, this is the tournament it's going to do well in. I definitely think that's going to be a thing. We don't have to worry about tempo. You don't have to worry about Buccaneer tomorrow. You don't have to worry about sweeps or a lot of things that like murder that just kill it outright. It's got 5 toughness on the back end. So I went ahead and threw Lionel Flynn in here to give it, you know, that 4/5 Swift Strike on the attack. I mean, that's just really hard to deal with. It's one thing to have like 2 5/5 troops that I can block it with. It's quite another to have a 4/5 Swift Striking troop where he can just, like, I have to block it with 5 troops that are 5/5 in order to kill it. I mean, that's not going to happen. That's not a possibility. You know, there's no world where that's like a good thing for me.
This deck is built to keep your troop levels down. So once a Killipede drops, if you can only get 1 troop out of turn, you're not going to make it. Like, he's going to attack. You're going to have to block. He's going to immediately kill the 1 troop you have. Next turn, you're going to play a troop. He's going to attack the next turn.
Right.
So you're never going to get ahead. So this deck is built.
The best thing you've got is either like double Crackling Bolt or like Crackling Bolt plus Crackling Rod, or like anything that just kills it outright. But a lot of times you have to 2-for-1 this guy. You know?
Yeah, I mean, this is a deck that's built to put you on your heels and keep you there until it kills you. Yeah. And it can do it. There's no doubt about it.
it's good enough where like if you took some set one cards and put them in here, I mean, we could see something like. So another interesting thing to me is the cycle of shin hair that's in here. So like when he first started talking about it, he's like, oh, it's running the ambusher, and I had built a different deck where it really wasn't, because I was like, what shin hair would I even run in here to like, because this guy only works when your shin hair die. And obviously Monsoon is an obvious choice for this deck. And if we ran it with set one cards, we would probably run at least a 2 of Extinction, probably a 4 of in the deck, depending on what the curve on the troops is. But you've also got Killblade, which actually works again really well with the Crackling Rot. I've got Darkspire Punisher in here, but you could probably find another Shin Hair that would work better. The nice thing about Darkspire Punisher is he's going to deck thin you or make your opponent discard cards. So, I mean, he does those things. And then he said he was running the Fisher Smith too. Now, this is one of the problematic cards in the format right now when there are Inspired Troops on the table. So this may not be a thing. If we were going to run this deck tomorrow, I would say don't run the Fisher Smith, just because there are so many issues with it. I'm not saying it's a bad card. I'm just saying that like there are situations you want to avoid tomorrow getting into where it is that there could be some complaints. If like I guess if your opponent has like some Inspired Troops on the board and you have a Fisher Smith, like it has some sort of weird interaction, and so just avoid it by not playing it. So we'll probably replace that here.
Yeah, I like the Fisher a lot, but now the one way to play around Fisher a little bit is to, if you see a troop get tunneled, give it one turn to let it sit, and then start swinging in. I mean, that's your best bet, because it's pretty much
that's what everyone did to
worthless
me when
2-1.
When I played against the computer just swings. But if I played against a real player, yeah, they know. They know.
Right.
You don't swing
it's like
against
Ruby
a blood.
tunneled.
You don't swing against a blood deck that tunnels a troop for one turn. You just don't do it unless you really want to get that Fisher Smith in play for some reason. It is random also, so I mean you could take your chances too if like they're down.
Yeah. I think this deck has potential. A bad hand neuters it. Like, it'll fall apart. If it can't keep up with you, it falls apart. Like, there's definitely issues. Human and this deck go well against each other. Like, it could be any man's game, but it's a good matchup. Mill does well against this because, I mean, they can go after your troops all they want. They're doubling up to get rid of your some of your stuff. They're killing things. You're getting card draw and burn out of it. So Mill matches up really well against this. With the exception of the Killipedes swinging in, you might have to find some creative ways to deal with Killipede. But other than that, I mean, I think it's not too bad.
I might play Minion of Yakuzan in here. I think that would be a fun one to have in there. Can't block, but it just keeps coming back and keeps attacking, I mean, maybe that would be a thing you could play.
I think there's some issues with that, wasn't there?
Is there? Oh, okay, well, I guess we can't play that.
I don't remember. I can look.
You could play Burrow Bunny as just one more thing to hold your opponent off, like where they think it's something else, like a Fisher Smith or something.
Possibly.
Oh, that's what it is. Ruby. If they're playing Ruby and they tunnel, it's like it's probably a Fisher Smith.
Yeah, the only absolute bans are Grave Nibbler and Runir Burrower.
Huh.
And
I'm not seeing another
behavior.
I mean, you could play Tormented Ritualist in here, but you're probably not. You can't guarantee you're going to gain those charges. I mean, it's good on the attack, but I feel like you want more blockers. I don't know. Maybe it'd be okay.
Right. Okay.
I don't know what else we could put in here.
No, I don't know. I mean, this deck it did really well against me earlier today.
There you go. Just play Necrophage. He gets +1/+1 for every troop in your graveyard. So just play that.
Right.
I mean, not very good versus Filcape because he'll just die outright. So maybe Minion of the Yakuzan is better, but either one of those two things. You say Grave Nibbler's banned too, right?
I'm looking now. I don't see it. There's an issue with Grave Nibbler, I thought.
Yeah.
The only two cards that are banned, like I said, are the Runir Burrower and the Grave Nibbler. Oh, yeah, so Grave Nibbler is banned.
Okay.
Yeah, if buffed while underground, the Grave Nibbler can no longer be buffed or debuffed.
Well, that's a little broken. Again, we're running the 4 Immortal Tiers in here to fix us. One of the big problems I had with this deck is, it has a lot of removal, but it feels like a lot of the troops can get outclassed very easily. And it's very much like either draw the Killipede and win, or win by like just pushing enough damage because Monsoon gave you enough card advantage because you killed some stuff early or something. But if you don't draw the Killipede or Monsoon, you basically lose. Like all the rest the stuff you have is pretty suboptimal. Like you've got removal. So that's the
Right,
biggest
right.
problem. That's the biggest problem I see with this deck. Also, like if they do manage to kill your Killipede, like you're in some trouble. Monsoon, not so much because his effect happens when he hits the table, and he does. You're still gonna want to get rid of him, but yeah, his effect is more potent when he hits the table. And there's no way to counter him right now because there's no counter magic in set two.
Right.
There's just basically Verdict of the Ancient Kings, which is probably going to see reserve play if any.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know how I would play against this deck too much differently than I was. The surprising card was Dishonorable Death. Really messed me up a little bit too there because it it basically took out a card I had in play and one out of my hand. And I even though I kind of stabilized a little bit for 5, it's one of the better removal cards.
It's pretty sick. I mean,
Yeah, I
definitely if
mean,
you're playing control and you're like Blood Sapphire control, I would consider running one of these or two of these. You know, at least at least one or two in your reserves. It does cost 5. It's a basic action speed, so it's really slow. But for dealing with things like what's his name, the Root Father, or even worse, the where is what's happening? No, I didn't want to print. I don't want to print stuff.
so my recommendation playing against this deck or
Wrathwood.
anything like it is if you're using Sapphire, you need to have 4 verdicts in your sideboard at a minimum because 4 verdicts would really harm this deck.
Yeah.
Because if they get the Killipede out, yeah, that's bad, but shutting down a lot of their removal, just like because if you have a 5/5 out, they're going to need to Crackling Bolt twice or Crackling Rock, Crackling Bolt. So just one well placed verdict shuts them down. One getting rid of Dishonorable Death, keep putting you down to 1 troop or something. Stopping that's a big one.
Oh yeah.
So I think verdict is big against this deck. So if you're running Sapphire, you better sideboard 4 verdicts.
Right. So if you have humans, yeah, or something like that. I mean, humans is pretty much the Sapphire deck. I mean, we probably won't actually see that much mill. Although that guy did pretty
No.
well because I saw him in the third round, and they did
Right,
showcase him too. So
Yeah, yeah.
I actually saw him the other day. Seemed like a nice guy. Okay, so last but not least, this deck is the one I've been playing quite a bit. We put a lot of work into this deck. It looks like the curve is jacked up, but it's actually not. And the reason why is because we're able to tunnel a lot of stuff early, and when we draw our Root Fathers, we can basically just shove them back into our deck. We can cantrip them back into our deck and draw a card, and then they get cheaper. So there are actually instances where you'll cantrip Root Father and you'll draw the same Root Father back in your hand, and it'll be 5, and you'll be able to play it the next turn.
Yeah, I like this deck a lot.
The biggest problem with this deck is the ramp aspect of it. It's a ramp deck without Chlorophilia because we don't have set 1 cards. Chlorophilia is head and shoulders way above Scrap Tech Brawler. Scrap Tech Brawler is very swingy and interesting, but definitely it feels bad whenever you play it because like it'll be turn 2, you won't have any big drops in your hand, and you have to play it because it takes 3 turns for you to get the extra 3 resources off of it, which could cast your big troops. And there's a lot of them in this deck. So you kind of have to just go all in on it. So that's one of the biggest problems I'm seeing with the deck already. We run 23 shards in here, which isn't bad because we have a lot of things that we can do at 2 resources. The Immortal Tears again here, can't reiterate that enough. There's no way you could run less than 4 Immortal Tears because the threshold fixing in this deck is it's really a big deal.
Yep. There's times where I'm sitting at 2 shards, no Mortal Tears. I don't take it. I'm throwing the hand back.
Yeah. Zakir is in here as a game ender. It's going to be a little bit slower. Like if this was a set 1 deck, we could play him on turn 4, possibly. In this deck, we can pretty much only play him on turn
5.
5. Yeah, we can play him on turn 5, and that's with the perfect hand. That's if you happen to draw the Scrap Tech Brawler, play him on turn 2, and then have 3 Ruby Threshold to play your Zakir on turn 5. So it's possible. Zakir is just one of these you're going to sit on for a while, and then he just takes the game over just with card advantage because all the powers are ridiculous. He can do every time he plays a power. Most of the time, it's it just puts me so far ahead that yeah, it takes over the game. You can see he's actually not that expensive. I would expect him to be about $10. He's actually in that $5 range. So if this is a card that you like, I mean, I would be picking him up now.
I like Zakir a lot. People have kind of given me grief about it. I know you're on board with this idea, but that gives you so many options. Plus, it basically gives you a second card every turn because it does, and that is a game ender. Like now you have card advantage. Like this is a Ruby bomb that gives you card advantage. It
Right.
can wipe board, clear resources, drop
Draw
a
three
4/1 switch
cards.
strike, draw 3 cards, do 3 damage. Like this card can break a game wide open for you. Like you play this card and your opponent better kill it because if he doesn't, he's about to get hit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also it helps you out in that flying range when when Wild has somewhat of a hard time blocking some flyers when they're pushing through that damage if they don't have their crackling bolts or their boulder tosses and whatnots. Some of the other ones in this deck, I've talked about this a lot at length on forums and different things, but there's the Wrathwood Master Moss in here. This is probably going to be our angel of this set, our Angel of Dawn. It's around $15-16. If you're going to buy this, you probably buying it now would actually be better because it can only
Yeah.
go up.
Yeah, right now we're looking at low 16, mid 18, highs 20.
Towards the end of the set, when we start getting into set 3, then it might dip down a little bit. But right now, this is a card you're going to want to have 4 of. Unfortunately, it's legendary. I'm not on board with stuff like that because this is a must 4 of in any deck that you play it. I would much prefer that legendary cards are, like cards that are named that you only play like 2 or 3 of, or cards that are really hard to get to. Like the Root Father, for instance, when I play the with set 1 cards, I only play 2 of these because this can be a dead card in your hand. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to cantrip cards for the next couple turns and then my opponent takes
Right.
over the game and I lose. I mean, I only play
Yeah.
2. So this is much more of a legendary type card to me. But that's just my view on rares versus legendaries and how they should be set up in packs.
Yeah,
So,
Master Moss should not be. I mean, Master Moss for 1 card, it requires 2 cards for your opponent to deal with it. Like to block it, to kill it, and then it turns into a 2/2. Now you have to take care of this 2/2 because chances are he's going to get the 5/5 back.
right.
So
And there are a lot of
potential's
cool
there.
ways to get that. So moving on to the wonderful Filk Ape, and I know a lot of people are trying to figure out like if this guy is even good. I mean, you can see that his value is going way down here, down in that 50 cent range. So if you need to play, if you're gonna play this deck, you need to play a set of these. Um, I personally value this guy at like $5.
Yeah, yeah.
He is like he's I think people are underestimating him because like he doesn't just bring back Root Father. He he allows your Warrior of Andronicus to be a 5/5 every turn. He allows you to use your Stink Troll every turn if you need to, although that's less good. He debuffs all of those Inspire troops on your opponent's side. He gets rid of Inquisitor debuffs. He gets
Yeah,
rid of Zared debuffs. He does so many things. I mean, if your opponent for some reason dropped Soul Cavalry, he turns Soul Cavalry back into Soul Marble. A lot of stuff. The
Yeah,
alternate
Filk Ape.
art Filk Ape is worth $25 or $30, and I think that's ridiculously overblown.
Oh my
I
God,
I wish they had put more into the market. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be possible. So
Yeah, because when I tried to get my 4th one so hard, I just couldn't get my 4th one in for winning another tournament. But the 3, when I saw it was clearing $20, I'm like, this is cash money as far as I'm concerned. These 2 are going up, no doubt. I mean, I held on to 1 just to have 1, but man. So you'll see we'll be using 1 of these on the weekend. But I mean, if I like sell each of them for 20 at the time, now it's 26. I should have waited. I could have made $12 more on that, but or 1,200 more platinum or whatever. But still, wow.
So
What
moving
a
on
great
to
card.
a very, very exciting game-ending type of card. If your opponent has an open board state, Arborian Root Father can be 16 damage all in 1 turn. I'm going to explain to you how. So you're playing Ruby, so that means we can play the Ruby sockets. So we definitely give him speed, so he can swing the turn he comes in. So he can do 8 damage, obviously, on the attack phase. Not only that, you give him Ruby of Destruction. So he deals his power damage to target champion. Unless you want to target yourself for some silly reason, you're probably going to be targeting your opponent, so that's 8 damage. For 7 resources, he's basically like a, what is it, the burn to the ground. He's like a burn to the ground that's cheaper. Because most of the time, you're not going to be casting burn to the ground for more than 8 anyways.
Right.
To finish your opponent's, just burn to the face. So this guy ends games. He's much better, I think, when you're playing the set 1 version of this deck and you have the ability to play your 2-point sweep and a lot of other things like Chlorophilia. I think he's much better at a 2-drop because you kind of do want to play him late game. And early game is not too bad because you can cantrip him if you need to by throwing him back in your deck and drawing a card. And then he gets cheaper. But in this deck, because there weren't a lot of options in set 2, we're playing 4. Just because he's a really big body and he's going to be tough to deal with tomorrow.
Yeah, I think being able to cycle him back in your deck is what makes this so playable. If you're looking at a hand where you're like, maybe I'll get to Root Father, then it's turn 3, you're seeing a lot of humans come out, you're like, nope, it's time to cycle this. Let's get the ball rolling. And your deck's sitting at 4 of them, so it's not like you're not going to see it. I mean, I'm running 3 in my deck because there's some other options I like.
I don't think I mean, 2 to 4, anywhere in that range should be fine. If you were going to run this
online,
deck.
And this card's only $350 right now on average. Like, I'm looking at the auction house right now. We're looking at $338 buyout, $339 buyout, $340, $350. That's a cheap game-ending bomb. Can't beat it.
I mean, yeah. And so I just keep saying going back, Heroic Outlaw, this is another one that's seen a decent amount of play. I mean, he's definitely pretty cheap. He's cheaper than our Root Father we were just looking at, because I feel like he is kind of like a one-of right now, because no one's really figured out exactly how to play 4 of them effectively. In this deck, he does exactly what he does in the other deck, where we gem him with flying, and we gem him so that he can't be blocked except for other Ruby troops. And then we have the one where everybody discards their hand and draws 3 cards. Now in this deck, I think he's a shade better than he was in the other deck. He's still a one-of in here, because you hopefully are playing him in such a way where like your life total is probably down, but you just need more stuff on the board, and your stuff should be better than your opponent's stuff. Like you're playing like 8 8s and 4 5s and giant 5 5s that come back, like this Wrathwood Master Moss and Zakir. I mean, you're playing a lot of really big drops, so hopefully he draws you better cards than your opponent. But it's a two-edged sword. I mean, if you didn't play him at all, you wouldn't be wrong. It's very much a risky play to have him in the deck at all.
Yeah, I at one point was running 2 of them, and I kept seeing him. The only plus side was because he was in hand, I was losing, so I got to play him for free in the last turn and almost pulled out a win.
Right.
But it's like, he's good because you're doing terrible.
Yeah.
So, it's like, hey, this card turned out to be really good. Well, it's really good because you're playing bad.
Yeah, and then also like your running deer also it's like you could kind of like push the envelope a little bit, but and not use your running deer gain 5 health, but a lot of times you kind of still want to gain that 5 health too. So I mean, it's very much it's really tough to make that decision to this guy may not actually even belong in here, honestly.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Last one is Trick of the Light. So card draw in this deck is pretty important. There's almost none. Basically, Zakir could draw you cards, and we just looked at Heroic Outlaw, and he could draw you cards if you actually get to play him. But Trick of the Light will play. We're only playing 2 because it only targets your troops. So some of the things you can do with Trick of the Light is you could get 2 activations off of Stink Troll in the same turn. So you could give 2 troops Crush. You could attack with Wrathwood or block with the little Mossling and turn it back into a 5/5 Wrathwood. Warrior of Andronicus could be down. You could, obviously pump him back up. I mean, just a little nuanced tricks and stuff that you can do there. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's actually space to cast spells between Swift Strike damage and regular damage. So let's say that you're attacking, your opponent has a Swift Striker and a regular damage troop, and he has to block you with both. So he blocks you with both. You can actually revert your troop with Trick of the Light between the damage, and your troop could survive. So, because it reverts it in such a way where it brings back their health, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. I do know that the Stink Troll one is particularly good because you play it on a troop, Stink Troll, play it on another troop, so you're looking at possibly stealing some damage with some trample. Abhorrent Root Father and Stink Troll are great, and just the
Oh yeah,
ability to like throw that on a couple extra troops is really good.
yeah,
So it's good
yeah.
stuff.
You wouldn't be wrong to play 2 Stink Trolls in here. I feel like. One of the big things also, if you were going back to when we get set 1 cards back, is playing with what's his name, Mancubus. Mancubus steals your opponent's stuff. Basically, he steals things that are less than his power, or equal to his power or less. So Stink Troll can buff him, and he can steal your stuff, and he can do it every turn when you've got him and Filk Ape in play. And so it's one of those situations that is really good for you when you're playing against the was it the Gore Feast deck, because most of their troops are basically 2 power or less, so you can steal almost everything in the deck. Now with the Mancubus, when in the other version of this deck, he is a 4-drop, but he's technically like a 6-drop, because a lot of times you want to drop him and use his ability in the same turn. If you have to sit with him on the table, those are always like the nail biting times, like where it's like he could just get killed and I don't get to use his ability. But yeah, this will be the deck I'm running tomorrow. I'm in between this one and the humans deck. The Killipede one is good too, but I feel like that one it doesn't have the same amount of card draw and other stuff. It feels like it could really fall on itself, but you never know. My prediction is tomorrow we're going to definitely see at least 2 decks that are going to have Master Moss in the top 8, and I'm sure Zakir will be there as well. I think we'll see a humans deck in there, and I think it's going to run something similar to this. I think we'll see at least 1 humans deck. Beyond that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'll make a vote for a goofy combo deck. I think we're going to find some goofy thing that not a lot of people have thought up. Some weird, Hex Mantic kind of, weird combo thing that pulls it out of nowhere and steals some odd victories. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll go ahead and close out the episode now. So thanks for joining us, all the people that stopped by. Really appreciate you guys. Stick around. We'll do a giveaway after the show. Tonight on Deck Builder Squire, we talked about all of the tournaments that are going on. So don't forget
all of them.
All of them. Don't forget, we've got the Hex Primal Budget Cup. That's we explained that. That's on February 1st. So go over to Hex Primal to check that one out. The Hex Tex Open is on the 17th, next week, next Saturday. And then the Diamond Cup, of course, is tomorrow. So if you haven't signed up for that, make sure to do that as soon as possible so you can go and play that. That one's free as well. The Hex Tex costs $5, and then the Budget Cup is free as well. We also talked about some of the Hex update with the news and how it is that they're still working on stuff and they're trying to get that PvE online. They also released the Child's Play sleeve. And then we went over 5 decks you could possibly play in the Diamond Cup series tomorrow. So if you guys decide that you're going to go ahead and play one of the decks, please tell me. Make a comment on my YouTube video when this gets syndicated out, and let me know how you did, what you liked, what you didn't like. You can tell me if you didn't like any of my decks. You can tell me they all sucked. I still want your comments. Put some comments below. I think what we'll do is we'll do a contest for the first week. I'll pick a comment that I like, and that person will get a pack of cards. So make sure to do your in-game name on the comments on the YouTube video, and between this week and next week of Deck Building with the Squire, I will give away 1 pack of cards to somebody's comment that I like. So make some good comments on those videos. Golden Saucer Guy, you got anything to close out with there?
No, have fun. Hey, I'll be streaming tomorrow. I know you'll be streaming tomorrow, so you should come watch us play. This is actually one of the rare times I'll be streaming. Yeah, I got to set that up too. We'll talk about that afterwards.
It's real easy.
All
right. So until next time, this is Aaron Squire signing off, saying God bless you and your families. Try not to rage too much out there.